We all think about our FICO score, right? But have you ever stopped to think about FICO, the actual company? Because it's so much more than just a number. It's this piece of invisible infrastructure that's as critical to our financial lives as the water pipes under our streets or the power lines over our heads. And just like those utilities, its power is absolutely immense and, for the most part, totally unseen. Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on that.
All right, so here's how we're going to break this all down. First, we're going to define what we mean by an embedded utility. Then, we'll dig into how FICO built its frankly impenetrable moat. After that, we'll uncover the wild 700% catalyst that kicked off a huge challenge. We'll analyze that challenge, the buy merge, and then, at the end, we'll weigh all the evidence and ask, is FICO's standard actually unbreakable?
Okay, so, first things first. We have to establish the core idea of this whole investigation. FICO is just incredibly unique and powerful place in the financial world. How on earth did a private company's product get so essential that it basically acts like public infrastructure? That's the big mystery we're diving into. We're calling this an embedded utility. So what does that mean? Well, it's a private company that has woven itself so deeply into a system that the whole thing depends on it, almost like it's a government-mandated service. And FICO? It is the absolute textbook example of this in the giant U.S. credit and mortgage market.
And this is really the key question driving our whole analysis today. How does one single for-profit company become the default language for an entire industry? And maybe more importantly, how does it get so dug in that trying to challenge it seems, well, almost impossible?
To really get that, we need to pop the hood and look at the mechanics of FICO's business model, what we're calling its unbreakable economic moat. Let's see how they put this thing together. So FICO really has two main businesses. They sell some pretty complex decision-making software to banks, and they sell their famous scores. And while that software business is nothing to sneeze at, the real magic, the source of all its incredible power, is sitting right there in that scores slice of the pie.
The power of the scores business is just incredible, and it comes down to three key things. First, once the algorithm is built, it costs them basically $0 to create another score. It's the closest thing to legally printing money you can imagine. Second, the cost for a lender to switch away from FICO is astronomical. Just think about a huge bank having to re-engineer literally thousands of automated lending models, retrain every single underwriter, and then get it all reapproved by regulators. The cost isn't just in money, it's in years and years of work. And finally, the name FICO itself. It is the standard. It is the very definition of creditworthiness in the United States.
But here's the thing. When you have that much power and you're not afraid to use it, you eventually get a target on your back. And in this case, one single shocking number would light the fuse for a massive regulatory battle, one that threatened to shake FICO's entire foundation.
Yeah, that kind of market power, it just doesn't go unnoticed forever. Lobbyists for the mortgage industry started raising some serious red flags, and those flags got the attention of some very powerful regulators, specifically the Federal Housing Finance Agency, or the FHFA. That's the government agency that oversees the whole mortgage market.
And this was the number they put on the banner, 700%. That's how much lobbyists claimed FICO had jacked up its prices. Now, whether that number was perfectly scientifically accurate or not, it didn't really matter. It was so explosive, so potent, that it became the rallying cry for a change.
You know, that one staggering number gave regulators all the political ammo they needed to make a move. It turned what was a quiet industry issue into a very public fight over competition, fairness, and the basic plumbing of the mortgage market.
And that fight took shape as a proposal to completely reshape the credit reporting standard, a standard that had been locked in place for decades.
Okay, so here's the deal. The system we have now is called a tri-merge. When you apply for a mortgage, lenders pull your FICO score using data from all three big credit bureaus. The new proposal was for a bi-merge, which would only require data from 2 out of the 3. The idea was, hey, this will force competition and bring down costs. But critics had a big worry, that using only 2 reports could miss some really important data, making it harder to accurately assess risk.
So this was the billion-dollar question, wasn't it? Could a regulator, even a really powerful one like the FHFA, actually force an entire industry to unplug a standard as deeply embedded as the tri-merge FICO score and switch to something totally new?
Which brings us right to our conclusion. After looking at all the evidence, is FICO's moat, its position as the industry standard, is it really, truly unbreakable?
You know, this entire battle can really be boiled down to this one idea. The math of what might be a more efficient system on paper versus the incredible, overwhelming inertia of the system that's already in place.
And this is the absolute key takeaway. The challenge to FICO was never really about whose algorithm was smarter. It was about changing the very language an entire industry speaks. FICO's greatest strength isn't its tech, it's its status as the default. To replace it, you'd have to get millions of people, lenders, regulators, investors, to all learn a new language at the exact same time.
And that leaves us with the final hanging question. Did this whole challenge just prove that FICO is a permanent fixture in our financial world, an unbreakable embedded utility, or was this just the first tremor, a sign that a much bigger earthquake of disruption is finally on its way?